really the very beginning of the turmoil that was to follow. I won't belabor that point.
Au niveau de la gouvernance mondiale,
how did we react when it comes to financial and monetary governance when confronted with these events? Well, I'll go through things quite quickly, but I'd like to emphasize the fact that I'm distinguishing between informal governance, so to speak, and formal governance. G7, the G8 are not based on any international treaties. It is a process of consultation between sovereign countries, but nothing more than that. Consultations between shareholders of the World Bank and the IMF, members of the United Nations. They didn't take decisions, so to speak. It was a process of reflection and trying to reach consensus, and whenever decisions were taken, they had to be taken either by the international bodies, and so other countries took part in those decisions, or the individual states themselves within their sovereign powers.
Cette idée que la gouvernance informelle devait être restreinte.
So the idea that informal governance, its main function was to be limited to industrialized countries. Well, a great deal of criticism was leveled at that idea for quite some time, and so the G20 was set up during the Asian crisis, and it became a very significant permanent forum. I have taken part in all of the meetings of the G20 among ministers and governors of central banks, and I think the G20 has shown that it is able to adopt very important initiatives. But we are seeing a great change in this informal governance, a shift. Not everyone expected this type of shift. We've radically changed informal governance. The G20 has become the forum where, indeed, leaders come together to foster exchanges between nations that play an important systemic role, so to speak. The Secretary General of the UN told us what was the percentage of GDP that it represents. But what I find most striking is that when we we tend to say the G20 is replacing the G7, the G8 has to find its place in this context, but you don't see what's behind the scenes. The forum, the financial stability forum, that was an informal structure set up by the G7. All of the cooperation among supervisors, cooperation between central banks and supervisory authorities, all of that close cooperation at the global level under the leadership and governance of a group of industrialized countries has now been significantly enlarged. I have played a significant role in this expansion, and it's a great pleasure for me to see how effective we have become, how effective we are in our meetings, where all of the main stakeholders represented by their governors of central banks or financial authorities, they all meet. And when we look at the strategic policies adopted by the G20, strategic orientations, well, a great deal remains to be done, and we certainly shouldn't be complacent. But we have made great strides. The working groups, in particular the Basel Committee, illustrates these this progress we've made, thanks to the active role played by the systemic emerging countries and their ownership of the process, is no longer owned by industrialized countries. So in a very, very short time, compared to the time it took to carry out Basel I and Basel II, we were able to redefine on a consensual basis, well, the whole definition of capital for commercial banks, and also redefine the requirements of capital ratios, and also define what needs to be done to ensure a transition between the current system and the future permanent structure. And I think it's really quite remarkable that we were able to, in such a short time, set up or define these innovative standards at the global level that, of course, are not sufficient in themselves to decisively make the whole international financial system more robust. They alone will not do so, but they certainly will play a significant role in bolstering the robustness and strength of the international system. And I think, again, within the framework of this international cooperation, it's very significant that the emerging countries are playing a key role and share ownership of the process with developed countries. And even in the context of this enlargement, we've been able to reach consensus quite quickly. And again, with regard to governance, since this is our topic, the topic of this conference, I would say that this is a completely different template, a whole new world. We're not really, I wouldn't say that it's a model of sovereign countries talking with one another. Well, there's sovereign countries with free market regulations, but within these sovereign countries there are other entities that are also independent and autonomous, the central banks, the supervisory authorities. So we are not only dealing with sovereign countries, but with autonomous entities and authorities within those countries. These our methods are based on the agreement reached between sovereign states, and that's the way that decisions have to be taken formally, but the system has been adapted to the new reality, a gradual emergence of consensus, not only among Westphalian sovereign states, but a consensus among public entities or agencies. And in fact, this is simplifying. It's even far more complex. Public entities that themselves have to take part in reaching this consensus. Yes, I may have gone a bit beyond the time that was allotted to me. I'm very sorry. But again, the Westphalian world itself, well, we mustn't forget the other pillar of the G20, coordination of macroeconomic policies. And this comes back to what Kemal and President Kuroda said. We need to accelerate the phenomenon of readjustment. There's a great deal of consensus as to the strategies, but there's no consensus as to how quickly these strategies need to be enacted. In a number of emerging countries, there's no disagreement on the strategies themselves, but on the speed with which they should be implemented. There's also agreement on the fact that there are issues or problems of savings that have to be dealt with, but the disagreements have to do more with how fast, how quickly to do so.